How you been? How you been? What's going on, family? Today was kind of a good day. All glory be to God. God is so good. He really is. You're gonna have to excuse me because I do got some gum in my mouth. Okay? Got my notes here. So, I wanted to talk about becoming meek and lowly. Um, Becoming low so we can go higher up. But we don't go higher just for us, for vainglory, just for to prove something to people. We do it for God's glory and to initially show people, so God can show people how He's working in our lives and how He can work in their lives too if they accept Him. And so I wanted to start off with Moses, right? And so Moses was the prince of Egypt, right? And he let go of the palace, right? God called him and he answered. But he let go of the palace, he let go of that position, um, to become a servant, to become a leader, to become a prophet. And God continued to walk and talk with him throughout the course of him saying yes to God, right? Um, Moses was blessed with a wife and kids, you know. I'm pretty sure he had, you know, he didn't lack anything, you know, he was blessed. Um, and a lot of people don't want to let that life go, you know. It was a rich young ruler who, you know, went up to Jesus and asked him, what do he got to do to, you know, to get entered into the kingdom? And he's like, well, go sell all of your stuff and then, you know, then you can come follow me. And he didn't want to do that. So a lot of people cannot let go um, of, of the past and of the material things because that's all they have. I do apologize that you are disturbed, and I'll be praying for you. Yes, I'll go ahead and mod you. And so, you know, he was blessed. He had a wife and he had kids, and you know, just by becoming meek and lowly and by letting God use him to be that servant, to be that leader, you know, and all he used was a staff. Then he created many miracles with this staff and his brother, right? Because he first didn't feel qualified because he said that his speech was impaired, you know. And so he like that. The Lord was like, that don't matter to me. He said, we still gonna get this glory, right? And he hardened Pharaoh's heart. Um, and a lot of the chariots and the people that rode on the chariots, a lot of um, the guards and the army, you know, they were able to see the Lord. And I'm surprised and it's messed up how a lot of them didn't be like, man, forget this Pharaoh. Forget this Pharaoh, it ain't gonna be me. He didn't already done brought plagues. He didn't already done turned the river into blood. We got locusts and stuff eating up on our stuff. And I'm surprised a lot of them didn't be like, forget this, I'm going back, man. You tripping, Pharaoh. But they were all able to see the glory of God. They were all able to see the power of the Lord, right? So Romans 8, it says, for we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. All things works for the good. And then what about Joseph? We know about Joseph and his brothers who sold him because they were jealous of him and they sold him into slavery. And then he became in prison. I'm talking about, becoming low so God can lift us up so he can get the glory. But we have to first become low. We have to become humble. We have to become meek and lowly first so God can use us and get the glory. And then he'll bless us. Like I just said, Moses, he was blessed with kids and a wife. And, he had cattle and was able to feed all his people and stuff like that. And from his loins, we know who came from Moses. And then Joseph, with his brothers being jealous of him, selling them into slavery, right? Then he became in prison because somebody lied on him because he was righteous. He was upright and righteous, right? And he stood his ground on being a firm believer in God. And it's like, no, I can't do this thing. Your husband didn't let me off in his house, and I'm doing good things. I can't sleep with you. But she lied on him and he got in prison. Nowadays that'll turn us away from God. We'll hate God, be mad at God, and ask God, why is he doing these things to us? And so, he went and got in prison, but because of for righteousness' sake, he was in prison. But the Lord was always with him too, because he gave him interpretation of dreams, which helped him to get out of prison, which helped him to get in good standings with Pharaoh, the other Pharaoh, right? The Lord was with him with the brothers, So instead of killing them like they had initially planned on doing, one of the brothers was able to talk them into selling him and not killing them. And then, he became the second in command of Egypt, of all Egypt, right? And so he had to become brought low so that way he can become high. And he became the second command in Egypt, right? And so Genesis 50:20, it says, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Right? It's not for our glory, but it's for the Lord's glory. It's not for our glory. It's not for us to be like, oh, I did it. See, you didn't believe in me and I did it now. Look at me now. It's not for that. He's going to bless you. And we know what came out of Joseph. He was blessed. He was able to feed his brothers, his dad. He was able to do a lot and found favor. We know about Job, right? He lost everything, right? We know about Job. That's always one that gets us. And so Job lost everything, and the devil even went messing with his health, right? And so Job 42:2, it says, I know you can do all things. This is after, he didn't talked with all of his friends, and the wife then told him to curse God, and he did all of this stuff, right? He didn't went through all of this stuff, and he still didn't curse God, but he still was questioning it and stuff because of who he had around him, right? They trying to talk him into being a sinner, or trying to tell him that he's basically blaspheming God, that God is a liar, right? But after all of that said and done, God had to tell him, like, listen, where were you when I was creating the heaven and earth and I was doing all of this stuff? Where was you at? And so he told Job that he can speak. And in 42:2, Job 42:2, he says, I know you can do all things. No purpose of yours can be thwarted. thwarted. You ask, who is this that obscures my plans without knowledge? Surely I spoke of things I did not understand. This is Job talking to the Lord. Things too wonderful for me to know. And then verse 5 says, 42:5 says, my ears had heard of you. This is why he was righteous, right? Because his ears had heard of him, and he wanted to keep being righteous of what he had heard of. This is faith. This is faith because we all hear him. We can't see God. Um, we can't see God, but we see him all the time. um, but we naturally can't see him. And this is where faith come in. That's why I said the other day, ain't nobody gonna be able to say they didn't know that God exists or God was real and stuff like that. They ain't gonna be able to say that. But Job 42:5, he says, my ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. Therefore I despise myself and repent. We gotta repent. And we got to constantly be repenting, because no, he didn't curse God, but he started to lose faith. He started to doubt. He started to question stuff, right? And he said, this is be above my understanding. This is above my knowledge. It's too wonderful for me to know. He said, I repent. We have to constantly repent. And then I'm gonna throw Ruth in there, right? Because Ruth, after her mother-in-law's husband died, her sister-in-law's husband died, and you have to be under a covenant of a husband to kind of be taken care of, right? Because back then, it wasn't just no working women and women's rights and all of this stuff and equal rights and all of that stuff, right? You have to have a covering of a man. And so everybody then died, and Naomi, the mother-in-law, she like, well, I'm about to go, to my peoples, back to my peoples. Y'all go back to your peoples, the sister-in-law and Ruth. But Ruth was like, no, I ain't going nowhere. She said, your people gonna be my people. Your God gonna be my God. And that's gonna be that. She said, you can't make me turn back and go to my people. And which the other sister-in-law, she did that. The other daughter-in-law that Naomi had, she did that. She turned back to her people and to their gods and did all of that because they needed a covering, right? From being a widow. And so she turned back to her people and the God, but Ruth stayed. And Ruth went to a field, and lo and behold, she was like, well, let me go and pick up some leftover grain, right? And so lo and behold, it was Naomi's in-laws, which is Boaz. It was Naomi's in-laws, which was Boaz, right? And so she went to go do all of that. And so when Boaz came across her, after she was just picking up the scraps, she's literally picking up scraps. But lo and behold, the favor of God that was on her for what she had done, right? It turned out to be Boaz's field. And so he like, hey, young lady, who are you? What's going on? And she's like, I'm here tilling the field or whatever. And he was like, yeah, you can be over here with the women and pick as much stuff as you need to pick. And they'll teach you how to do this. You get thirsty, go get you some water. I done told these men to leave you alone. They don't need to touch your hand, lay a hand on you. They can't touch you, holler at you, none of that. And she like, well, why have I found favor in your eyes? Why you being so nice, Boaz, Mr. Boaz? And he like, well, I heard what you did. And he said, I heard that you left your family to be with Naomi, your mother-in-law, how you loved her and stuff like that. And so Ruth 4:14, it says, the women said to Naomi, praise be to the Lord, who this day have not left you without a guardian redeemer. May he become famous, because Ruth by then didn't get married to Boaz, right? Because her mother-in-law didn't taught her how to put on some perfume, go on over there and get on his feet and cover his feet up, and you get on over there and with him, right? And she was still young. Ruth was still young. Boaz was kind of up there, right? And so she was like, so long story short, Boaz went on and married Ruth, and they had a baby. And so these are the women that's there back at Naomi's hometown where Ruth followed Naomi to. The women said to Naomi, "Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer. May he become famous, the son, the baby. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons have given him birth." Then Naomi took the child in her arms and cared for him. The woman living there said, "Naomi has a son," in place of the sons that she lost, right? Naomi has a son, and they named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. And we all know David, right? So she was blessed. Ruth became low because she started out picking up scraps out of people's fields, right? She started out picking scraps up out of people's fields. And so then she got married. And then she had a covering of the man who owned the field, right? And her mother-in-law too. So all glory be to God. There's a gift with becoming meek and lowly. That's why I keep saying God has to know your heart. See, it wasn't just for Ruth. It was for her mother-in-law and generations to come. Because again, he begat Obed, Obed begat Jesse, and Jesse begat David, right? Uprighteous men. We know Joseph. It wasn't just for Joseph, even though the very people that sold him into slavery and did all of these things to him, God preserved him. It was for the glory of God. And then his brothers initially knew who his brothers was from another woman of his daddy's, right? So Joseph got favor from becoming meek and lowly. Job, he got twice back as what he lost. Moses, he was still blessed. He performed many miracles with the staff. He was able to see the glory of God. He was able to see God. He was able to talk to God for his obedience and his righteousness, for becoming meek and lowly. He was the prince of Egypt. He lived in a palace. He could have had any woman, anything at his disposal. Right? So there's a blessing in becoming meek and lowly. There's a blessing in your yes to God. When we don't understand what's going on. When we don't understand what's going on, but we're trusting in him. That his ways are not our ways. His thoughts are not our thoughts. Okay? So that's all. I ain't gonna keep y'all too long. I'm in here cooking. We chilling. All glory be to God. Continue to pray for me. I'll continue to pray for y'all. Most definitely continue to pray for you. Naba Yodi. Lanka, hello. When you African, I'm African. I was born in America. I'm not African. You didn't even stick around, Christian kid. Wanting to be a moderator. There you go. All right, y'all. Continue to pray for me. I'll continue to pray for y'all. Continue to stay in your word. Continue to fast and pray. Okay, I love y'all. Have a good night. Mwah.